Welcome to Real Herbalism Radio, show 265, recorded at Big Dog Studio in Eugene, Oregon. This show is made possible by The Practical Herbalist. For practical info on plants you love, visit The Practical Herbalist at thepracticalherbalist.com. Sacred Blossom Farm. We use small-scale farming and artisan care to create functional, delicious, and beautiful teas. Learn more at sacredblossomfarm.com. Now, here are your hosts.
I'm Candace Hunter.
I'm Patrick Hunter.
And welcome to Real Herbalism Radio.
You know, it is so funny. I do the intro, and then it's like all my air is gone, and then I can't say my name. Have you ever noticed that? So, yeah, if you're ever listening to our podcast, you'll hear Candace will say hers, and I'll say mine, but then I'll be like really light. It's never really there. And in herbalism kind of lose. So next time you'll notice it and you'll be like, hey, he's right. He messes his own name up.
What's better than messing up someone else's name?
That's true. That's true. Well, KP Khalsa is not a name that's too easy to mess up. It's pretty easy. 4 syllables, boom.
No.
Done.
That's true. That's true. And talking with him was a delight, wasn't it?
I like him a lot. I mean, obviously, you know that if you're in the herb world, KP Khalsa is right on there with Rosemary Gladstar, all of the greats, if you will.
Yeah.
The greatest hits, if you will. And, he's been so influential in creating modern herbalism that it was really great opportunity to get someone like him, on the podcast and talk to him and, just sit back and let him speak. Because he's done this so many times, and he's just a warm person, and forthright, answer your questions, doesn't hide behind anything, just is.
Yeah, and he's so knowledgeable. I mean, it's impressive to me how he's mastered so many modalities, and it all came from just practicality.
Right?
He just, okay, I got to learn this now to understand it better. I got to learn that now. Okay, I'm going to try this and learn that. And I mean,
which
the
is so
knowledge base is just
which is so interesting too, because for all intents and purposes, he was an all-American kid. Grew up in the 50s, 60s, and like he said, he did bologna sandwiches and did the thing, Kool-Aid, all the stuff that kids do at the time. And then being diagnosed with a very rare degenerative
and debilitating.
Yeah. And being told at 10 that, you're not going to make 40.
Right. Oh, God.
That can mess up with a kid.
Yeah. That can really, that's a mind scramble.
Yeah. He went on living and didn't change much until his early 20s, when he
late teens, early 20s,
when he discovered yoga, and that gave him something that was a relief, that wasn't the painkiller, that wasn't the other thing, which got me to start thinking about, sometimes we don't look at alternatives until if you will, the trusted, tried and true path tells us we can't help you. There's no pot of gold at this rainbow. There's no great view at the end of this road.
Right. Yeah.
There's nothing we can do for you. And until you face that reality, you're oftentimes not willing to explore other modalities like yoga, like herbalism, like, changing your diet, whatever it is, because you have this belief that the system or whatever is set in place is going to help you. And to be fair, then, and I'm talking about, Western medicine, it seems like they'll never admit that there's not a course of action that they can't take.
Yeah, I think modern medicine is crippled by I'm not going to say the insurance industry, because it isn't entirely just the insurance industry's fault, but the insurance industry arose because of litigations against, medical practitioners, some of which may have been totally legit, but some of which are, I think, a stretch at best. And we've reached a point where I think many medical personnel can't give you a straight answer. I mean, I know since I was quite young, when I would ask the doctor, do I weigh too much? I'm standing there. They can see. I'm mostly naked. You can see how much fat there is or isn't on my body. You've done the Basmati BMI index calculations, and you've looked at the numbers, and you see how tall I am, and you know how old I am, and we've gone through all this stuff. And their answer is, well, how do you feel? Well, great. That's sort of a good answer, because the truth is, too fat really is about how you feel, and if you're not feeling comfortable in your body, and it is due to excess weight, that could mean that, yeah, you probably would feel better if you didn't have that weight on you. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, you can also be a very large, rotund person and feel great in your body, in which case you're not too fat, you're fine. I totally get that. But you can't get a straight answer, even if you just pare it down and say, this isn't even, it's just purely about heart health. Or, even pare it that, you can't get a straight answer out of them. And I think the reason is because they don't want to get sued. They can't give you an honest answer because you might quote them, and that could end up becoming a lawsuit for them. And that's to me, that seems shameful, that we've reached a point where that kind of, you can't just get a straight answer out of your practitioner. In theory, I've done this with doctors when I was younger, when I was trying to find that answer for myself, because I really didn't know how to look at it. And I was asking, in one case, a doctor that I had been working with at that point for 6 or 7 years, and had, that person had been, I've been seeing the doctor regularly for regular appointments. And when something went wrong, I went in to see that particular doctor, and we had a relationship, or at least I felt we did, as a doctor-patient relationship, appropriate. And I still couldn't get a straight answer. And it left me not knowing what to do. Do I have to worry about exercising and losing weight, or don't I? I don't know what to do. And, I think that's like a super mini lightweight version of it. I think when you start looking at people who are facing much bigger issues, whether or not I had too much fat on my body when I was 22 years old, or however old I was at the time, is pretty minimal. It's really, honestly, a very lightweight concern. There are people who are struggling with things like, chronic digestive problems, like heartburn that they get all the time. And they know it's not a heart disease thing, and the doctors tried 1,000 different things, and still there's no answer to what's causing it or how to stop it. And instead of saying, we can't help you, maybe see somebody else, they keep trying other things, which can become more and more damaging to the body. Mm-hmm. And that's frustrating. And I don't think it's because a doctor wants to do that. They're practicing. That's what medicine is. It's a practice, right?
Well, yeah, and I think
they're trying.
For a lot of people too, it's difficult to pay for healthcare, and looking at other modalities like yoga, massage, treatment, chiropractic, acupuncture. Those are typically, lucky us, we live in a state that is covered.
Right, but a lot of places
it's not. And so there you go. You have to do out of pocket. And for a lot of people, that's just too much.
I have had, because there have been times where we have not had insurance, or the insurance we had wouldn't have covered it anyway.
Right.
And for me, because of the injuries that I've had when I was much younger, chiropractic and yoga and acupuncture, those are just enough course, and I will pay for them out of pocket. And honestly, if I have to choose between paying for health insurance or paying for those modalities I know will help me, I'll choose the acupuncture and the yoga and the chiropractic every single day of the week. And I will eschew the health insurance premiums because I don't feel that it's worth my time and energy to fight with a health insurance company to get the treatment that I know will work. And I've got a limited budget.
Well, I get it.
I mean, if I could do it all, sure, I'll just do it.
Well, and I don't, obviously I don't want to be, saying that, allopathic medicine is not important. It absolutely is. I break my arm. I have a heart attack. Whatever. I'm in a car wreck.
Proper doctor.
Are you kidding me? Yoga is not going to help me at that point.
No, acupuncture will not
help me. I mean, you're not going to acupuncture a wound.
No,
Get it.
I know.
So I'm not saying that, I don't want to make it sound like I'm against. What I'm saying is that ultimately, I think the patient or the person needs to take responsibility and to listen to the cues. I mean, having been in a family that has a lot of medical stuff, you can start to hear the code words that are being said.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this will work. We can talk to another person. We can get a second opinion. We can do this. This might help.
Yeah.
Those are all code words for they don't know. You could risk it and take the chance, but the results are not guaranteed.
Yeah.
They could say, our treatment right now isn't working the way that we had hoped. You may want to look at some alternative ideas.
Yeah. That would be really nice if there was,
And this is my experience. I'm not saying that every doctor or nurse or whoever is like this. I mean, there may be a bunch out there that massively recommend, therapeutic massage or acupuncture. It's just, this is my experience. So that's what I'm going to talk from. It's just me. Because I'm sure someone could tell me, well, my doctor did that. And my doctor, you're great. Good doctor. Awesome.
Yeah, stick with them.
But I also, have had experiences in my family that, it's always the next expert. It's always the next treatment. It's always the next surgery. It's always the next thing. And that'll be the fix.
Yeah, yeah.
And honestly, if we go back to a few of the podcasts before, we've talked about, just being able to take control of your diet. I mean, in the KP Khalsa's case, it's exactly what he did. Is one of the things that he did was rethink his diet. And, he was talking about tofu and, eschewing all the junk food and stuff to get his body running as well as it could, and then seeking all these other treatments. I mean, I think I'm guilty of it too. You go in for the doctor for a problem and you get this treatment, and when you're done, you go right back out and do the things you were doing that got you in there.
That sent you in. Repeat the pattern.
You would just repeat the pattern because, they can fix me.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, I probably have too many saturated fats. I probably don't need that much sugar. These are things that I don't need those nitrates. I love my sausage, but I guess I don't need that. Or I love my pepperoni pizza, but that's out now.
Yeah.
Because of these other reasons, because the nitrates are not good for me or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, my own personal experience is that yoga has made loads of difference in my life. And I'm at a point where before yoga, I was sore a lot of the time. And it was the kind of achy sore that sometimes would be really bad and I couldn't do things, but mostly I just dealt with it. And doctors weren't really able to help with that because honestly, it's a structural thing. So I would go see chiropractors and I went into massage therapy and I was doing a lot of that. I mean, a couple times a week at that point, sometimes as much as 3 times a week. And I was paying for all of that out of pocket back then because we didn't have health insurance at the time. And it was making a positive difference in my life. And then I found a really good yoga practitioner who he's helped me become more flexible than I was when I was 10 years old. So because of working with him, I've had radical change in how my body handles things. And sometimes I do stupid things last March I was doing some printing with some stamps and I somehow let 3.5 hours of printing happen. I didn't move. I just was doing it and I was having fun and it was great. And then I just sort of looked around and realized 3.5 hours were gone and said, gee, my back shouldn't feel like that. This isn't good. And, it took me a couple of weeks to right the wrongs I did in those 3.5 hours. But, I won't do that again for quite a while.
Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, I remember those 2 weeks. Geez, you were in pain every day for that 3.5 hours of quote unquote joy. You spent 2 weeks in pain.
Right. But compared to what I used to live with all the time, it was actually like it hurt and that sucked. That was no fun. I went to see the chiropractor. That helped a lot. I did yoga. I was careful about what I did, but I did my yoga every day, even when all I could do was just maybe one downward dog. But I just kept doing it. And then I saw the chiropractor again, and then, saw the acupuncturist. I went in for the massage therapy toward the end of it. I did all the things that I know how to do. And the result was far less time spent going to see practitioners than what I used to have to do just for regular pain. In part because yoga has taught me so much about how to take care of my body better and what to do when things aren't quite right.
Yeah. So I think for people out there, I guess, make your choices and do the best you can. And it doesn't hurt to try something different if the road that you're on or the path that you're on isn't working.
And it's okay to take a break from, like, if you've been working with Western medicine for whatever your condition is, and, maybe the cure is actually a little more painful than the actual condition, or maybe the best you've been able to do is hold steady. You're not getting worse, but you're not getting better either. It's okay to look at bringing other modalities in and giving those a try too. Definitely you want your team to work together. You want your doctors and your, let's say, acupuncturist. You want them to be able to work together, to be able to speak to one another if need be.
And there's, obviously there's nothing wrong with, asking your physician to say, I'm thinking about doing some yoga treatment or acupuncture. And, if there's nothing that will be countering the therapy you're getting, they should be able to tell you that.
Yes, I think that transparency is important. Working with an herbalist, for instance, if you're going to work with an herbalist, make sure they are very clear on every single other medication you're taking.
Oh, yeah.
Including the amounts that you're taking, and make sure that your doctors, physicians, whoever it is that's managing those medicines for you is also aware of the herbs in the herbalist. If you can, allow the herbalist to speak to your medical practitioners or sign whatever papers are needed to allow them to communicate. That's very helpful, because a lot of medical people haven't been trained in what the herbs do or don't do, but a lot of really good herbalists do understand the chemistry of what the herbs are doing and how they're acting in the body. And while they may not understand what the pharmaceutical is or isn't doing, which the doctor needs to understand, the herbalist should be able to say to the doctor, well, this is going to cause the liver, this one helps the liver process these types of chemicals faster or not as fast or whatever.
Right.
And between the two of them, they'll be able to determine whether or not the herbs that you want to take will go well with the pharmaceuticals, or whether adjustments need to be made on either side for levels, so that you're doing this in a way that's going to be most effective for you.
Are you looking for custom apparel for your office, your team, or your group? acehighgraphics.com can help you. They can help you design your apparel and get you the best price on it. They will also give you a great quote so you'll know exactly what you're going to pay for. Visit them at acehighgraphics.com.
So yeah, one of the things that I really appreciate about KP Khalsa is the fact that he's got so many modalities that he understands. He understands the science. He understands the energetics from Ayurvedic perspective. He understands them from traditional Chinese medicine perspective, and from European herbalism. So he understands what he's talking about and the healthcare that he's talking about from all those many perspectives, and he passes that on to his students, and he uses that when he's working with clients. So I appreciate that multi-pronged approach or that diversity approach. So that's one of the pieces that I honestly, I really, really appreciate about him.
Exactly. I've had a chance to listen in on some of your seminars you've taken with him, and it's just so amazing the amount of stuff he knows about.
And that reminds me, he offered everybody who listens to the podcast the opportunity to take a free class with him.
Wow.
It's a webinar class on herbal first aid. So the link for that will be in the show notes.
All right. Yeah. So if you want your free seminar with KB Khalsa, that'll be in the show notes link. And what an awesome thing he did.
Yeah, it's a wonderful gift.
Totally. Make sure to enjoy that one and let us know what you learned. All right. Hey, we actually have an Herbal 101 question.
All right.
And this question is actually really, it's a basic question, but it's an interesting one. And what's even going to be more funny is that you're going to hear my Minnesota accent come out when I ask this question. Not because I wanted to, but because it is ingrained into my speech patterns as from where I'm from in Minnesota. So here we go. And I'm going to probably make a mistake on this person's name, so I apologize going forward. So I'm going to believe it is this. So Vinon asks, what is the local name for Euridica dioica?
Dioica.
Dioica. See? That,
you sound so Minnesotan.
That is really a hard word. That pushes all my vowels. My A's, my I's, my O's, so.
And it's not an easy word to say.
No.
Euridica, Dioica. Dioica.
See, yeah, there's no T in there.
Yeah, I know. I just want to add a T. So that's not what we normally call that plant.
No. What do we normally call that plant?
That plant is usually called nettles or stinging nettles. It is also sometimes called the great stinger.
The great stinger?
Yeah, or the stinger.
We went herbaling last spring, and I my tool fell in the bucket, and I didn't put my gloves back on
before you picked your tool out.
I put my tool out. And got a stinger in my face.
Yes. Euridica dioica. Euridica dioica. The Euro part of it. It's about burning. So Euridica is burning, so stinging. That's where the stinging comes from. And there's a second one, Euridica urens, which is small nettle, lesser nettle.
Is that the one with the purple flowers? No, that's
dead nettle. That's dead nettle. It's a different plant. Okay. But the stinging nettle and the small nettle are often mistaken for one another in the field, and they're both similar properties. One of them, I think the smaller nettle has fewer stings to it.
Oh, okay.
But the stingers are actually trichomes, and they're on the leaves and stems.
On the underside.
And the word trichome is probably familiar to all of us who live in cannabis-friendly states.
Yes.
Because if you're growing cannabis, the thing that you're looking for first is the trichomes, and the trichomes develop, and that's very exciting because buds will follow. And when buds follow, they have lots of trichomes, and the more trichomes, the more high.
You got really excited about that.
But not all trichomes are built alike, because obviously these stingers on nettle don't get you high at all.
At all?
No. I mean, they will raise your skin into welts, and it'll make it burn. But none of that's really high in any way. I can't really think of how that you could even. So.
Right.
Anyway, that's what the stingers are from, is trichomes. So the stingers in nettles contain formic acid, which is the same thing that that ants have in them. The ants when you
fire ants, not fire ants,
no. Not fire. Well, I don't.
You mean like the sugar ants?
Yeah, like sugar ants. When you crush them, and there's that horrible smell.
That sweet kind of smell?
Yeah, the sweet one, or I think it's actually more of the one that smells like urine.
Oh, okay. So like a uric acid.
Yeah. Well, it's called formic acid that they have, but it smells.
Okay.
It smells. That's why they're sometimes called piss ants. I was trying to avoid having to say that, but
I think that's funny.
Really?
Is there really an ant called a piss ant?
Yes, there is.
That is so funny to me. That was one of my dad's favorite. Yeah, come here, you little pissant. I'm like, what?
Yeah, the real
I just thought he put 2 words together to the thing. I didn't know there was an actual.
Yes.
Wow.
So
look at that.
So piss ants are in no way the name that you would use for Euridica dioica.
Okay. You would say stinging nettles.
You would say stinging nettles or nettles.
Or nettles.
Some places, like I said, the stinger, nettle leaf, same thing. And one of the things I liked about this particular question is the fact that, there are many names for this plant. Sometimes you have plants where the names are even, stinging nettle, the stinger, nettle leaf. They kind of all incorporate the same 2 words, nettle and sting, right?
Right.
So if you're talking to one person and he calls it the stinger, and then you're talking to another person, she calls it nettle leaf, and somebody else, third person, says stinging nettle, you kind of put it all together fairly easily, right? And it's important because in like one county, it might be called the stinger, and in another county, it might be just called nettle. And obviously, nettle and stinger don't necessarily connect, although if you know that nettle is the stinging plant that burns, you might.
Right.
Knowing the Latin name for it or the botanical name for it, Euridica dioica, helps you to make the connection across localities.
Yeah.
And when you leave, for instance, North America and English-speaking territory, you're going to find even more different diversity of local names. So some of the other plants that I thought illustrate that concept even better are things like the fly agaricus or fly agaric, which is the mushroom that's often featured in like Disney films. It's got a red top and white warts on it. Yeah. And that one is actually, the Latin name for it is Amanita muscaria. And anywhere you go, you can call it Amanita muscaria, and people know what you're talking about. And in some places, you call it fly agaric. In other places, fly amanita. It's, different names. It could be confusing, and that's one that would be bad to confuse. You want to know. Another one that I find frustrating, or did find frustrating when I was first learning, is the viola species. Mm-hmm. There's wood violets and sweet violets, and you read about how great these are for skin care and, making oils, and they're really good spring foods. And locally, all I could find was pansies. Pansy doesn't sound anything like violets.
No.
It is a viola plant. But I often wondered, I don't know, is the violet they're talking about the same thing as pansies? I don't know. It's very confusing. And the reality is that they're both violas. One is viola tricolor, that would be the pansy, which are also called violets. So viola tricolor may be called pansy or may be called violet. And the other one is viola odorata. And that one could be called any version of something with the name violet. Sweet violet, wood violet, European violets, medicinal violets. Mm-hmm. And yes, they can be interchanged, but it took me a long time to figure that out because I was often talking to herbalists who would be talking about violas or violets. And I couldn't get a straight answer for a long time on whether pansies qualified or not. And then in addition to that, when you go to the garden centers, there are other plants that are not violas that are also sometimes called pansies. So knowing that viola tricolor or viola odorata is what you wanted is really important. So knowing the local names is helpful, but knowing the botanical name is safer.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I hope that cleared it up, Vinon, for all of the different names that nettle can have, but really the name that will keep you sane is Euridica dioica.
That's better. That's better.
And you have stinging nettle. All right. So thank you. And so with that, put an herb on it.
The statements made about herbs and products on this podcast have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided on this podcast or any affiliated websites is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare professional. You should not use the information on this podcast and its affiliated websites for a diagnosis or treatment of any health problem. Always consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new vitamins, supplements, diet, or exercise program before taking any medication, or if you have or suspect you might have a health problem. Any testimonials, questions, or case studies are based on individual results and do not constitute a guarantee that you will achieve the same results.